Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Asusai, and today is going to be the last part of our Epic History TV's Alexander the Great series. So if you guys missed it, go back and watch part 1, 2, and 3 before you hit this part 4. It's been awesome. Alexander the Great, he pushed through. He's been very strategic, won several battles. There's a lot going on back home, though, that kind of worries me. He's also overextending himself, in my opinion. He's getting a little greedy. But we'll see how it ends in this one. I do know how he dies. I don't know where or if it's mid battle or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. Anyway, next up, I'm not 100% sure what we're going to be watching. I have a couple more individual videos that I want to throw out there that you guys have suggested. And yeah, then we'll get into another series, maybe Ottoman Empire or I mean, there's several different options. Maybe Julius Caesar. But yeah, anyway, I'll sit back, I will shut up, and let's just get started.
At the age of just 22, Alexander, ruler of the small Greek kingdom of Macedonia, had led an invasion of the vast Persian Empire. After a string of victories, he smashed Persian military power at the Battle of Gaugamela and took the Persian throne for himself.
Yeah.
Now, in 330 BC, Alexander continued his march east. His goal, to find and kill Bessus, a Persian usurper claiming to be the rightful king, and to subjugate the empire's eastern provinces. Alexander headed first for Aria, today part of Afghanistan, where the Persian governor Satibarzanes had launched a revolt after initially pretending to submit to Alexander. The rebellion was crushed and Satibarzanes killed in single combat by a Greek cavalry officer. Nearby, Alexander founded the city of Alexandria Ariana, modern Herat, one of around a dozen cities that Alexander would eventually found, almost all bearing his name.
Wow.
Alexander marched on to Frada. The Macedonian court had a long tradition of plots and assassination. 6 years before, Alexander's own father, King Philip, had been murdered by his bodyguard. He was now informed that Philotas, commander of his companion cavalry, had uncovered a plot to assassinate Alexander, but kept it secret. Philotas and his father Parmenion were among the most respected of Alexander's commanders, and had played crucial roles in all his great victories. But when Philotas confessed, under torture, Alexander had him executed, then sent assassins back to Ecbatana, where Parmenion was governor, to kill him before he even heard of his son's death, and had a chance to turn against Alexander.
Problem is they've got a lot of people under them, right?
In 329, Alexander resumed his pursuit of Bessus. En route, he founded the city of Alexandria Arachosia, modern Kandahar in southern Afghanistan. As he reached Kunduz, Bessus was betrayed by his own men and handed over in chains.
Oh wow.
Alexander sent him back to Persia for execution as a kingslayer. Alexander pushed on into modern Tajikistan, where the Sogdians rose up against him. He had to fight off attacks by local tribes and take several towns by assault.
I gotta say, this is actually going a lot better than I thought it would. I thought he was really overextending himself, but he seems to hold control very well.
On the banks of the Jaxartes River, he founded the city of Alexandria Escate, meaning Alexandria the Furthest, so named because he had, at last, reached the limit of the Persian Empire. This frontier was frequently raided by nomads, known to the Greeks as Scythians. Alexander lured them into a decisive battle near the Chexartes. The result was a crushing victory for the Macedonian king that put an end to the raids.
I love that they had the birds in these.
But fighting against Bactrian and Sogdian tribes continued, frustrating Alexander and tying him down in a difficult guerrilla war.
I believe it. So he is kind of overextending.
By now, many of the Macedonian troops were unhappy with Alexander. Most had not seen their homes in years, but their king seemed bent on conquest without end. What was worse, he'd begun to adopt the rituals and dress of their defeated Persian enemy, customs they viewed as effeminate and decadent. At Marakanda, modern Samarkand, after a furious drunken argument, Alexander killed Clytus the Black.
What?
Clytus had been one of Alexander's best
that
generals, and the man who'd saved his life at the Battle of the Granicus. Alexander was full of remorse, but his growing arrogance was alienating more and more old comrades.
Yeah, I believe it.
When he tried to make his countrymen perform the traditional Persian ritual of proskinesis, prostrating themselves before the king, he crossed a line. To Greeks, this was blasphemy. Only a god was worthy of such respect, and Alexander was forced to back down. In Bactria, another plot to assassinate Alexander was uncovered. This time the ringleader was a royal page, one of the sons of Macedonian nobility who attended the king. Hermolaus had become murderously bitter towards Alexander over a perceived injustice. He and his accomplices were tortured and then stoned to death.
Jesus.
Callisthenes, Alexander's official historian, was also implicated in the conspiracy. He was thrown in prison, where he later died. That summer, in 327, according to legend, Alexander became captivated by the beauty of Roxana, daughter of a Bactrian lord. Their marriage was also a sound political move, helping to end local revolt against his rule, and allowing him to continue his advance into modern Pakistan and India.
Oh, down in India we'll probably see some more of those elephant riders. To the edge of the world. I love it. He really is overextending.
Alexander now prepared to subdue the Persian Empire's most eastern provinces, which had yet to recognize his kingship. To do so, he would first have to cross the Hindu Kush mountains and reach the Indus River Valley.
Yeah, there's a lot of Alexandria cities.
Advancing in two columns, his army won a series of skirmishes against the Aspasi and Asakani as they fought their way into what's now the Swat Valley of northern Pakistan. After a fierce siege, Alexander took the Asakanian capital of Masaga.
Okay.
According to legend, it was ruled by a beautiful queen, Cleophas, who bore Alexander a son and was allowed to keep her throne.
Really?
The ruler of Taxila, near modern Islamabad, had formed an alliance with Alexander. Together, they marched to face Porus, king of Paravas, at the Battle of the Hydaspes.
There they are, the elephant riders. Those things are so cool.
It was Alexander's costliest battle. as Porus's war elephants inflicted terrible casualties amongst the Greeks. But despite Porus's fearless leadership, the battle ended in a decisive victory for Alexander, winning him control of the Punjab. Alexander wanted to push on into India, to reach the great river, which ancient Greek geographers said formed the edge of the world. But at the river Hyphasis, known today as the Bias, his army mutinied.
That's when that speech happened, was right after the mutiny. This river was supposed to be the edge of the world? I mean, they knew stuff was past there, right?
His men had marched thousands of miles, fought countless battles, and not seen their homes in 8 years. They'd heard rumors of gigantic armies waiting for them in India. They refused to go any further.
Makes sense. It's already a huge,
Alexander was
kingdom.
furious, but had to turn the army around. He followed the rivers of the Punjab to the sea, a journey that took 10 months. On the way, he defeated the Malians, but while leading the assault on their capital, was wounded in the chest and nearly killed. On reaching the coast, part of the army under Nearchus boarded ships and returned to Persia by sea, sailing through the Straits of Hormuz and entering the Persian Gulf. It was one of the great ancient voyages of exploration,
Yeah,
as these waters had been previously unknown to Greeks.
that's cool.
Meanwhile, Alexander led the rest of the army back by land through the Gedrosian Desert, today in southern Pakistan. But extreme heat and shortages of food and water led to terrible suffering and many deaths among his army.
I believe it. It's a hell of a desert to march
On his
through.
return to Persia, Alexander executed several of his viceroys and governors, men accused of ruling unjustly and robbing temples and tombs during his long absence in the east.
Wow.
At Susa, he arranged a magnificent mass marriage of Macedonian officers to 80 Persian noblewomen to strengthen
He
bonds
arranged that?
between his two kingdoms.
There's no way his soldiers were happy with that. They were mad. So a lot of them were mad that he's wearing Persian clothing. You know, let alone now some of them are forced to marry Persian women.
Alexander himself married 2 Persian princesses.
Wow,
He
2?
also paid all his soldiers' debts and ordered 30,000 youths from across the empire to be trained in the Macedonian art of war.
Wow.
But at Opis, his Macedonian troops mutinied. They were offended by Alexander's apparent preference for Persian advisors and Persian ways. Alexander had the ringleaders executed and made a speech to the men reminding them of the glories they'd won together,
Oh, that's when he did
leading
the speech.
eventually to an emotional reconciliation.
Okay.
At Ecbatana, Alexander's closest and most trusted friend, Hephaestion, died of fever. The king was grief-stricken, went days without eating, and ordered a period of public mourning across the empire.
Wow.
Alexander waged a successful campaign against the mountain raiders of Kossia, who not even the Persian kings had been able to subdue. Returning to Babylon, he was met by embassies from distant peoples, come to recognize his greatness. Ethiopians, Libyans, European Scythians, Lucanians, Etruscans, Gauls, and Iberians. Alexander's Bactrian wife, Roxana, was now pregnant. But as he planned his next campaign, to Arabia and beyond, he developed a sudden fever and died days later,
Wow.
aged just 32.
I wonder if it was actually just some fever or whatever. When I watched the speech and they talked about his death, somebody said there's a good chance he was poisoned. I wonder what type of poison that would be if that was the case, you know?
The cause of Alexander's death has never been established. It may have been malaria, cholera, typhus, or poison.
Oh, cool. Successors.
Alexander died undefeated in battle. His reputation as a brilliant, fearless, and daring military commander remains undimmed. His decade-long campaign created one of the largest empires ever known, stretching from Greece to Pakistan. But it was vast and unstable, held together only by his own brilliance and name. Alexander left no plans for his succession, and his generals soon began fighting among themselves to carve out their own empires.
Wow.
In the Wars of the Successors, Alexander's widow Roxana and his young son were murdered.
Wow.
His own gold sarcophagus, en route to Macedonia for burial, was hijacked and ended up in Alexandria in Egypt. Today, its location remains one of the world's great unsolved mysteries. Few men have ever had such an impact on the course of history as Alexander the Great. The breathtaking achievements of his short life ushered in the Hellenistic Age, as Greek ideas spread across the territory of his former empire, fusing with local traditions to trigger new developments in art, science, government, and language. Some of the successor kingdoms to his great empire were short-lived. Others endured for centuries. But all, in turn, would fall to new forces.
Really?
And in the West...
What about this one? I have no idea how to say that word. I guess the P is silent. Ptolemaic, Egypt. Did that just become modern-day Egypt?
To the rising power of Rome.
The Roman Empire. You know what? Maybe I'll hit that next. It's a good rolling point. It rolls right into it. Yeah, let's have a talk about that, you guys. Do you think he was poisoned? Also, what happened to his body? It got hijacked and taken to Alexandria, but Alexandria. It's not there anymore, you know, and they could have easily put it on a ship and taken it anywhere. So I don't know. It's interesting. Have you guys heard anything about it, or what might have happened to his body? Let me know for sure. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. I think the next series that we're going to watch will probably be Julius Caesar and just in general the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Just because it seemed like that kind of rolled right into it, you know? And then from there we'll probably push into the Ottomans because it kind of rolls into that. But I'm not really sure. Anyway, till next time, this is Aces High. And I'm out.